Happy Halloween, everyone! I'm Arto, I'm an Egyptologist, and welcome to this year's Halloween video. This year, I'm telling you about a ghostly encounter in a story set in ancient Egypt. The protagonist, based on a real-life figure from ancient Egypt's past, sets off in search for an ancient, powerful, and magical artifact. And no, this is not a story written in modern times that happens to be set in ancient Egypt, but rather this is a real-life ancient Egyptian story. The papyrus we know it from dates to the late 4th century to early 3rd century BC.
Ancient Egyptian civilization lasted for a mind-bogglingly long time. Nearly 3,500 years, in fact. In other words, that's a long enough time that the ancient Egyptians could tell stories that are set in their own already ancient past. Oh, and you're probably wondering about the change in scenery. Well, it made sense to start off the story to kind of like Halloween-y vibe, but ultimately this is an ancient Egyptian story, and it's quite a lighthearted one actually, so I felt this was more appropriate. I'll put that into perspective in my next video, which is going to be a commentary on the story that I'm about to tell you about. And now, let me introduce you to our protagonist, Khaemwaset. He bears the same name as the real-life figure that he's based on. This was the 4th son of one of the most illustrious figures from all of ancient Egyptian history. None other than Ramses II, the Great. But more on that in my commentary video. For now, I'll just say that Khaemwaset was a fascinating figure. He had a lust for knowledge and he was deeply interested in Egypt's history, which was already ancient by his time. Khaemwaset's reputation as a wise scholar, learned in arcane knowledge, was so great that, much like King Arthur in European tradition, a fictionalized version of himself became the protagonist of a series of stories well after his lifetime. What I mean is, if this papyrus was written around 300 BC, well, that's 900 years after his death. In the story, Khaemwaset, true to his real-life self, is extremely knowledgeable, always wanting to learn more, and unlike his real self, is actually an accomplished magician. What I mean by that is not, stage magic, pulling rabbits out of hats, but rather actually able to perform magic. The story begins with Khaemwaset in his lust for knowledge, setting off to find this magical scroll written by Thoth, the god of knowledge himself. And just what is written on this magical scroll, you may ask? Well, let's hear it from the story itself. There are 2 written formulas that are on it. If you read the first formula, you will enchant heaven, the earth, the underworld, the mountains and the seas. You will find out what all the birds of the heavens and all the reptiles will say. You will behold the fish of the deep, though there are 21 divine cubits of water above them. End quote. In other parts of the story, it also says that the reader will find out, quote, what all the birds of the heavens, the fish of the deep, and the herds of the desert were saying. End quote. The text continues. If you read the second formula, you will behold the sun god Re appearing in heaven with his Ennead, together with the moon in its manner of rising. End quote. So Khaemwaset, true to his character, just couldn't pass this up. So he goes searching for this magical scroll of Thoth. He locates it in the necropolis of the city of Memphis, in the tomb of a prince named Naneferkaptah, who had lived centuries beforehand. Once inside the dark depths of the tomb, he meets the ghost of Princess Ihweret, the wife and sister of Prince Naneferkaptah. She warns him, telling him that obtaining this scroll will bring him nothing but misfortune. And in a long flashback, she tells the story of how she, Naneferkaptah, and her son Mer'ib had died because of it. Khaemwaset does not heed her warnings and insists on the scroll. Just then, the mummy of Naneferkaptah, which was right there, reanimates, and he gets up. Now, up to this point in the story, Naneferkaptah had only appeared in the flashback of his wife Ihweret. But now, having re-arisen, he challenges Khaemwaset to a few rounds on a board game, telling him that if he beats him, he gets to take a scroll. Now, from Ihweret's flashback, it's become amply clear that Naneferkaptah was himself extremely intelligent, highly educated, and himself an accomplished magician. In other words, Khaemwaset had met his match. And it does not go well at all for Khaemwaset. He loses the first round, at which point, in a comedic turn of events, Naneferkaptah picks up the game board and proceeds to bash Khaemwaset over the head with it, at which point Khaemwaset sinks into the ground up to his feet. They play a second round. Khaemwaset loses again, and as you can imagine, Naneferkaptah picks up the game board once again and bashes Khaemwaset over the head with it again, causing him to sink into the ground up to his penis. From the very first time that I ever read this part, I was instantly reminded of this cartoon.
The survival of the fittest. Down through the ages, self-preservation was recognized as the first law of nature.
Man, I love that series. So, they play a third round. Khaemwaset loses again, and Naneferkaptah hits him over the head once again with the game board, causing him to sink into the ground up to his ears. At this point, Khaemwaset calls out to his foster brother, Inaros, and tells him to go and get his protective scrolls, and tells him to go to Pharaoh himself to get what he refers to as the amulets of Ptah. Inaros comes back and he gives the magical objects to Khaemwaset, who uses them to fly up out of the ground. He snatches the scroll of Thoth and he escapes the dark depths of the tomb. Ihweret is distraught. Naneferkaptah, though, he consoles her, telling her that he will make Khaemwaset come back with his tail tucked between his legs. As you can imagine, really bad things happen to Khaemwaset. So, he comes back to the tomb of Naneferkaptah to return the magic scroll of Thoth. And strangely, Ihweret and Naneferkaptah greet him really enthusiastically. And Naneferkaptah is standing there laughing, telling Ihweret, what did I tell you? But it's not all's well that ends well quite yet. In Ihweret's flashback, we find out that although she and her son Mer'ib are there in spirit form, with Naneferkaptah in his tomb, that they weren't actually buried there, but in fact somewhere near the city of Koptos. Naneferkaptah tells Khaemwaset that it's only thanks to his magical ability that they are there in spirit form with him. So, Naneferkaptah asks Khaemwaset to go find the tomb in which they're buried and to retrieve their mummies and bring them here to bury them with him. So, Khaemwaset sails off to the city of Koptos, and after 3 days and 3 nights of searching in the desert mountains for the tomb, researching its location in the archives of the Temple of Isis, he doesn't manage to find the tomb. Just then, a mysterious old priest shows up to Khaemwaset, and it's actually Naneferkaptah in disguise. He tells him that the father of the father of his father told the father of his father that the father of the father of his father told the father of his father of the location of the tomb. At which point, Naneferkaptah tells Khaemwaset where that tomb is located. And so it is that Khaemwaset manages to find the place where Ihweret and Mer'ib were buried, and he brings back their mummies to Memphis and buries them in the tomb of Naneferkaptah. The family reunited, we now have our happy ending.
And there you have it. But before ending this video, I just want to point out once again just how many cool things happened in this little story. And it wasn't even all of it. We didn't cover, for example, where the flashback was, what happened to Khaemwaset after he left the tomb. But the part that we did cover today had so many cool things that you might think are modern tropes or motifs. For example, an ancient, powerful artifact that's hidden in a tomb somewhere. Going out and exploring to find the tomb. We have research in old libraries. We have restless spirits who cannot find peace until they are buried in their proper place. We have adventure and even comedy. So cool. And the rest of the story has even more stuff in it going on. I mean, we have in that one even more adventure. We have a femme fatale. We have angry gods and proper action where they're looking for this magical chest that contains the scroll and it's guarded by this gigantic snake. Then they fight with the snake and but as you can tell, that would need a lot more time to go into. And in fact, like to make a proper video about it, maybe even a production budget. So I'm going to leave you with what we covered today, but I hope you enjoyed that much and happy Halloween.